I mean, I'm just not interested in people like that. It's just my preference. Everybody has preferences. Is it wrong to have racial preferences in dating? Does having racial preferences in dating make you racist? Well, I wanted to explore that in today's video. Welcome to my channel, Bree the Womanican. Hi, I am Bree. This is actually my second time filming this video because the first time I was drinking wine while I got ready and got very drunk. I was inspired to make this video because I've recently been getting into the dating scene and I've been wondering if my race, obviously I am a Black woman, is going to make my dating life difficult. And I'm just wondering, what are my prospects? Who's the most likely to be interested in me? I watch a lot of Dating Coach Anwar, and I have been thinking about that, and I'm like, I don't even think people like Black girls. So I wanted to talk about that in today's video. So a little preamble here. When people would say, I don't like Black girls, I would get super offended. And I couldn't really put my finger on why I would get offended. Obviously, if somebody's saying I don't like Black women, they're also saying I'm not attracted to you, which would make me get a little butthurt. But outside of that, I really thought about it and I was like, Black people are so diverse. I feel like we come in the most diverse flavors of everybody because of the one drop rule, right? If a person has Black anywhere, that person is considered Black, right? People are upset about the new How to Train Your Dragon live action movie that's coming out because the girl who is supposed to be playing Astrid in that movie is actually going to be played by Nico Parker, who is 1/4 Black, which is crazy because her mother, Tandy Newton, is mixed and her father is pure white, as far as I know. And people are very upset about that because even though she's only 25% or less, really, she's considered Black and people are upset and they're saying Hollywood's at it again. So when people say that they don't like Black women, I'm like, well, what about Rashida Jones? Do you not find her attractive? What about Halle Berry? What about Meghan Markle? Robin Thicke, ex-wife? Paula Patton, are you not attracted to them? Are you not attracted to Cassie, whose mother's heritage is African American, Mexican, and West Indian, and whose father is Filipino, but she's considered Black? Are you not attracted to her? Is that who you're talking about when you say you're not attracted to Black women? Those Black women don't have stereotypical Black features. They don't have tightly coiled or afro textured hair. Some Black women have very loosely textured hair. Some Black women are very light skinned. Once again, due to the one drop rule, if you have one Black person in your family within the past few generations, you're considered Black. Especially you're considered Black if you have one full Black parent. Full Black. I am 75% Black. The other part of me is 25% is white. If I have a kid with a white person, that kid is actually going to be more white than Black. But that kid would be considered Black in our society. Do you understand me? So I think that's why that bothers me. But I decided to make a video about it because I wanted to talk about it because when I was really thinking about it, I was like, is a person who has racial preferences when dating, are they racist? So let's talk about it. So there was a pretty well-known poll done by OkCupid in 2014 that detailed the racial preferences that they gathered from their platform that pretty much showed that nearly all women preferred white men, with the exception of Black women, and all men had a preference for Asian women. And on the contrary, it showed all women having the least amount of interest in Asian men and all men having the least amount of interest in Black women. And I don't think any of us are surprised by this, but why is that? Now, all women had stronger preferences for their own race than other races, shown by the chart. And also, women tended to have a lot more polarizing opinions about the racial preferences of their partners than men did. Except for Black men, who had a 1% rating. It seems like all the men really dislike Black women. The strongest one on here, though, is Asian women definitely have a strong preference against Black men, but they do have a strong preference for Asian men, who got the lowest on this list by other women's standards. What I wanted to talk about is something that I haven't really heard too much. I have watched one that I can think of video where the person went deeper into the underlying reason for these racial preferences, but I haven't really heard anybody talk about it in a way that I think people should hear it. So to start off this discussion, I wanted to come right out the gate and talk about white people and the role of white people in this entire conversation, because we can't talk about racial preferences without first talking about white people and their role in all of this. I have a Latina friend, and I've only ever known her to have straight hair. There was one time that I don't even know if it was like a picture or if I saw her in real life, but I saw that she actually had curly hair and it was very pretty. And I was like, I didn't know your hair was curly. And she was like, yeah, I always straighten it. I've known her for 3 years. She's like, I always straighten it because my brother makes fun of me when I don't straighten my hair, and he says I look ghetto. That intrinsic bias has had that effect on her. And I always make the joke, white people ruined us. Because I'm like, you wouldn't be saying that otherwise, right? But I wanted to talk about whiteness as a cultural default. And I ask you, I beg of you, please let me finish my point before you go and leave your little comments in the comment section. Okay, you don't know what I'm gonna say, okay? Let me finish my point, please. So any meaningful discussion of racial preferences must begin by acknowledging the foundational role of whiteness in shaping cultural perceptions. In American society and in many other Western contexts, white cultural norms, aesthetics, and values function as the default standard against which other cultural expressions are measured and defined. This is due to majority status, the demographic predominance of white Europeans in American society established their cultural practices as dominant just numerically, right? Colonialism and imperialism, the globalization of European political control position Western cultural norms as civilized standards, media domination, the overwhelming representation of white characters, white stories, and white perspectives in entertainment and news media reinforces their centrality and economic power. The concentration of wealth and institutional control among white populations enables cultural influence. I'm sorry if it looks like I'm reading from a script. I literally spent 3 hours today writing this thing out because my last video was such a mess. It was all over the place. I was watching it and I was like, the fuck? I don't even remember recording this. I was so drunk. That's why this time I'm drinking tea. Like a good girl. So the positioning of white culture creates what might be conceptualized as a base layer upon which other cultural identities are constructed in the American context and in many other Western societies as well. Like a Chipotle bowl, where the rice is the foundation before the other ingredients are added. The white American culture functions as the assumed starting point to which other cultural elements are added or compared. This can manifest itself in everyday language. We talk about Black music, Asian art, Hispanic neighborhoods, while not really designating cultural products or spaces as white. Maybe those of us in those minority groups might say that to each other, but Black people will talk about Black spaces, but you don't really hear white people talking about white spaces. This creates social dynamics like assimilation pressure, where members of non-white groups are expected to adapt to cultural norms in professional, educational, and social contexts. Code switching, where people of color feel like they have to switch between different cultural expressions. A Black person might talk to another Black person in AAVE, while they might talk to a white person in a more professional tone. Let me just say, I hate when this happens. If you're a Black person and you're a professional and you're talking to me in a professional context, do not talk to me in AAVE. Talk to me just like you talk to them white people. I'm a customer. Talk to me like I'm a customer, not like I'm your homegirl. Also, issues with cultural appropriation, where elements from non-white cultures are extracted from their original context and incorporated into mainstream white culture without attribution or understanding, often misrepresenting the original thing that it was actually meant to do, and potentially giving it negative connotations. Like how people associate dreadlocks with being dirty, because the type of white people that get dreadlocks are typically hippies, and hippies are associated with being dirty. Meanwhile, we can have a black woman over here making six figures with locks, having to deal with these negative stereotypes being placed on her because of a white person's experience with another white person with dreadlocks. That's why cultural appropriation is wrong. I hope I was able to explain that. I don't think people know why it's wrong. So that was my attempt to just explain why white people, especially white men, might come across as most desirable because we have the most exposure to them, right? This is their world and we're just living in it. I could grow up in the same type of, in a similar environment to white people, but a white person doesn't have to carry the burdens of their culture on their back or all the stereotypes that come with that. And honestly, it seems very liberating. That would be great if I could just be like a person and not just a black person. I used to have all white friends when I was in middle school, and it had nothing to do with race. To me, it was just about, these are the people that is this too bright? I think this is way too bright. I was looking a little ghosty. I think that, or is that too dark? I don't know. Oh no, whatever. But yeah, they were just the people that I had stuff in common with. We had similar interests and I was like, okay, yeah, sure, let's be friends. But then I started feeling like I was the token black girl in the group. And I didn't want to feel like that. So I tried to start making more black friends from there because I was starting to not feel like an individual. I was starting to feel like a label. But all that is to say, I just wanted to give a baseline of how white people impact racial preferences. I do not blame white people. I guess you can blame certain people for influencing preferences, but I can't be like, oh, it's the white devil's fault that I hate myself, or why nobody wants to date me, or I don't know if oh my god, I'm not doing a good job this time either. I'm not recording this video a third time, okay? I better get my shit together now. So I totally forgot to write notes on this part, so I'm just gonna go off the top of my head. Something that I realized when I really started thinking about like racial preferences and how people felt, especially because of the one drop rule in regards to blackness, I don't think people have racial preferences in regards to features, unless maybe you're a person that has a preference for lighter skin or brown skin or darker skin. I think it's less about that, and I think people are more or less attracted to different cultures. I think that's evident in that chart that I showed you, where people had the strongest preference for their own race because people have the strongest preference for their own culture. That was shown strongest by the black women who had the strongest preference for black men. I think that some cultures have positive associations that outweigh their negative associations, and I think some cultures have negative associations that outweigh their positive associations. When you think about what's getting portrayed in the media about these cultures, especially like what does your boss look like? What do the top most successful people in your country look like? What do the poorest people look like? What are the people that are shown in the most violent or heinous situations look like? Those are all things that people begin to associate with a person's culture. So when they are thinking about dating somebody, a guy's looking at a black girl's picture and thinking, I don't know, black women are confrontational, black women are loud. That's just not something I want to deal with. I don't think I'm interested in black women. And it doesn't matter if they look like Paula Patton or if they look like Meghan Markle. She's still carrying all these black stereotypes on her back. These are the stereotypes that I mentioned would be great to be liberated from. And really, if you are a person of any culture and you don't want to have these stereotypes tied to you, you're going to have to do the work to get out of it. I wasn't talking to you. Okay. That's what I thought. See, look at me, just fulfilling stereotypes and coming off as confrontational to, I can't say her name or she's going to wake up again. But it's Siri, all up in my business. Stop listening to me. Anyway, the more negative stuff you have to deal with, the stronger the history, the more you're going to have to work to get away from those negative perceptions that people have of your culture. And clearly, by this chart, black people are at the bottom. So yeah, it doesn't seem very exciting for my dating journey, if I'm being completely honest. So something I was thinking in regards to this situation is I think people confuse culture and biology. And I think that is just part of the human condition. I just think that's how we are, right? Most people really don't want to work too hard to try to understand another person, right? You want to just be able to glance at something, absorb it, and then go on about your day, right? That's why all these apps, these dating apps, it's just you're doing swipe, swipe, swipey, because you could just look at somebody, gauge how you think they're going to be as a person, obviously whether or not you're attracted to them, and then swipe left or right on them based on who you think that they might be. And I think that when it comes to people and their ethnicities and their racial identities, I think that people will see a black person or a white person or whoever and think that this person might innately possess qualities associated with their ethnic group of origin. And I think that when we observe behavioral patterns or social outcomes that correlate with racial or ethnic categories, there's a tendency to attribute? Oh my God. An attribute is a noun, attribute is a verb. There's a tendency to attribute these differences to intrinsic biological characteristics rather than recognizing them as manifestations of cultural systems, historical contexts, and socioeconomic structures. This has been coined as biological essentialism, which is the belief that members of a category share an underlying immutable essence that explains their visible and invisible characteristics. Just assuming all black people are loud and all Asian people are demure. The classic nature versus nurture debate, right? It underestimates the power of socialization and institutional forces, makes people view culturally reinforced behaviors as fixed, inevitable characteristics. I've been seeing a lot in the comment sections of if it's a black person that's doing like some type of crime or whatever, I'm seeing people write in the comments the usual suspects. And I'm like, I don't think I like that. People make prejudgments about individuals based on your perception of their identity, also known as prejudice, right? I got a lot of people in my last video, which was how I became a black atheist video, that were saying, what does blackness have to do with being an atheist? And I'm like, see, you don't get it. You don't know, like, being black it's a very big part of my life, actually. I'm aware that I'm black all the time, every second of the day. That should be evident in that chart that you just saw where black women were highly disfavored, right? Yeah, that's what I experienced in real life. I wasn't surprised by that chart at all. So now we understand that it's not just nature or nurture at play. How we develop is a mix of our genes, our surroundings, our culture, and our own choices, our own agency, all working together in complex ways. We are individuals, each and every one of us. So figuring out the difference between biology and culture is very important. And learning how the two mix together to shape who we are means that we have to dig deeper than just forming sweeping opinions based on surface level observations. Because doing that has historically been used to justify racist ideas and beliefs, resulting in some pretty fucked up shit. And you're better than that. I know you are. So next, I want to talk about fetishization. Fetishization. I think that's it. Now I want to talk about fetishization. Fetishizing people. It's wrong. Don't do it. Racial fetishization occurs when an individual has an attraction to someone that is based primarily on their race or ethnicity, reducing them to stereotypical characteristics. It's not just about liking certain things. It's about focusing on these weird, oversimplified ideas about a whole group of people. And instead of seeing them as individuals, it exoticizes them, which is dehumanizing. When one of my white neighbors showed interest in me over my white friend, I took it as a sign that he must really like me, since he had looked past my race. He must have seen the true me and thought, wow, Brianna's just so cool. I just really like her as a person. Or at the very least, I like that she got a fat ass. I'm okay with that too. But when I found out that he later dated another black woman, it made me wonder, was he actually interested in me personally, or does he just have a black girl fetish? Especially because this other black girl looked nothing like me, bitch. Nothing. If the other black girl he dated was also like short, curvy, and thick, I would have been like, okay, maybe he just likes short, curvy, and thick, and black girls are typically curvy and thick. But no, this girl had to be like 5'10", swole. This girl was swole as fuck. And I was like, I don't see the similarities between us other than the fact that we're both black. So I don't know. To me, it just seemed a little problematic. I don't know. So more explicitly problematic was my experience with another white guy. He actually tried to sneak a picture of me while we were out on a date, and he forgot that the flash was on. He would always say, oh, you're the only black woman I've ever been attracted to. I've never been attracted to another black girl before. He's like, just everything about you, your face is just so attractive to me. And I felt like he was suggesting that I should be honored by that. I think probably the most widely recognized example of this would be white men's fetish with Asian women, which is rooted in long-standing Orientalist stereotypes portraying Asian women as submissive, as exotic, as hypersexual, while simultaneously adhering to traditional gender roles. Fetishization. I put that word in my notes a lot, and I don't think I realized that I was gonna have to say it out loud as many times as I am, and now I hate myself. But anyways, it reflects broader societal issues and objectification, and addressing it requires both individual awareness, like you gotta be aware that you're doing it, and then you have to be aware that it's wrong, and then you have to want to change it and reject those stereotypes that have been really perpetuated by the media. But what if you know somebody is from a culture that you have researched and you genuinely like that culture? You know, what if you have done research on Korean culture and you want to date somebody from Korea? I knew a person who got super into like Korean culture, obviously with the K-pop boom and K-dramas, and they got super into Asian men. And I personally thought it was problematic because I'm like, obviously you're fetishizing Asian men based off of what you've seen about their culture that has been presented to us through media. Like, you probably should talk to some actual Asian men in real life. Maybe talk to some actual Asian people, go to some Asian spaces and see how they are in real life. At the very least, stalk some Asian people on social media. I stalked a whole family for my book that I'm writing. They were Colombian, so that I could actually know how Colombian families operate for my book. Is that wrong? Should I not have done that? I stalked them for a long time, and I won't even tell you because I'm embarrassed. And I don't want you to think poorly of me. I just wanted to make sure they had proper representation in my book, and it wasn't just me pulling what I thought about Colombian people out of my ass. I didn't want to do that based off of watching a couple of telenovelas. That's fucked up. So we come back to the original question. Does having racial preferences in dating make you a racist? For that, we would need to know, what is the definition of racism? Racism is defined as prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism by an individual, community, or institution against a person or people on the basis of their membership in a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is a minority or marginalized. So with that, I'll say that is typically why Black people will say Black people can't be racist, because there is an element of marginalization and minority status that is typically tied to racism, right? I think racism is, people define racism as prejudice plus power, and Black people in America don't really have any power. Do I disagree with that? I actually do disagree with that. I definitely think that Black people can be racist, especially when I would hear stories from Asian people who were mercilessly bullied by Black people because they went to a Black school. And I saw it firsthand. I remember I was at school and there was this Asian girl that sat at the Black table by accident. She was new, and she sat at the table that was the Black kids' table before. She sat there before anybody, and she had already started eating her food. And then obviously the Black kids came in and started sitting around her. They didn't make her move. They just talked shit about her the entire time of lunch. I felt so bad. Her little face was so red. But all that's just to say, I don't think just because you're a minority that you can't be racist. I've heard other minorities say negative things about other minorities. It's because I provide a safe space for people to tell me their true thoughts, because I need to know what people are thinking. But racism can be defined in multiple dimensions. There's institutional racism, there's structural racism, there's internalized racism, there's individual prejudice. And in considering dating preferences, we might ask, do these preferences arise from negative stereotypes or assumptions about a particular racial group? And do they reinforce harmful hierarchies of human value? Or are they reflections of a person's personal experience with a particular culture? Like that Asian girl who sat at the black kids' lunch table who was bullied that entire lunch period. Is she gonna dislike black people from that experience? I wouldn't blame her. It was pretty awful. And even though it happened when she was in high school, stuff like that can get really deep rooted inside of you and into your psyche. Are they reflections of a person's compatibility with the culture? Like I was saying before, what if you like a culture because you actually genuinely like the culture? I genuinely think the only way that is a satisfactory answer is if you went to that culture's country of origin. If you have a preference for a particular culture, bitch, you better be living in that country. You better speak the language. It better not be some shit where you done seen it on TV and you're like, oh, I've been watching K-dramas for the past year. I'm suddenly into Asian guys now. Problematic. Don't do that. Or you don't listen to Kendrick Lamar's new album and you're suddenly into black women because you like black culture now. No, unacceptable. To really determine whether or not a culture is for you, you need to immerse yourself in that culture, because otherwise you're just romanticizing that culture and what you think an experience is going to be like with that person based off of your romanticization of their culture, of which they might have the attributes of that culture that you like, or they might not. Lastly, do your preferences rise from aesthetic reasons? Do you have aesthetic preferences? I was watching a video from a white man who was making a similar video about racial preferences, and he said that he has a preference for women with dark features. And he said, number one, he likes Latina women. Number two would be black women. And I'm like, I get that, liking people with darker features. Is that a fetish? Because he's white? I don't know. Where does the preference stop and where does the fetish begin? It's a very slippery type of slope. No, don't jump up here. My cat's trying to jump on my lap. No, don't look at me like that. I feel bad. But, what if you're white and you like white women, but you specifically like white women with blonde hair? What if you're Asian and you like Asian women, but you particularly prefer Asian women with paler skin? I know that's a big thing. In black culture, there is a preference for women, not just black culture, by the way, in all the cultures, in every culture, except for white culture. The funny thing is a preference for lighter women. That's called colorism, right? A preference for people who are lighter skinned, which is why I developed reservations about dark-skinned men when I was like around 14. My first ever boyfriend, I remember asking him, what did he like about me? And I was hoping that he would say, oh, you're so pretty, or your smile, or personality would have been great. But, I was 14. I wanted him to tell me how cute I was. And he said, you're light-skinned. And at that point in my life, I had not been exposed to colorism. I didn't know what colorism was. I had just started having black friends. I had been used to being the black girl my whole life. And it was not flattering to me at all. I felt like he was fetishizing me and I didn't like it. And so after that, I started thinking with every dark-skinned guy that was interested in me, I was like, do you just like me because I'm light-skinned? Would it not matter what I looked like or talked like? I didn't like it. It just made me very suspicious. Did I still have dark-skinned crushes? Yes, but that was always lurking. Also, in terms of aesthetic preferences, a lot of people have preferences for the culture that they grew up in or the race that they grew up in, and especially preferences for what they are told is attractive within their own race. Like I said, colorism is prevalent across the globe. I remember there was this girl that I had a crush on. She was a total bitch and I hate her, but I think that girl is beautiful. She is a brown-skinned black girl. I showed a picture of her to a dark-skinned guy and he was like, she's okay, but she's not light-skinned. I was like, excuse me? I'm like, this girl would never even talk to you, okay? You are nothing to her. You are scum on the bottom of her shoe. She's a model, and you don't like that she's not light-skinned? Excuse me? Anyway, but in terms of aesthetic preferences, I don't know. Like I said, you gotta be careful, because what do you like about Asian people? If what you're attracted to in Asian people is their eyes, is that racist? If what you like about Black people is the blackness of their features, is that racist? I don't know. I think it's weird. Maybe not racist. It's not racist, but it's a fetish, right? And racial preferences in dating exist on a spectrum of motivation and manifestation. There's the difference between preference versus exclusion, right? There is a huge difference between having the tendency to date within certain racial groups versus complete exclusion of entire racial groups, right? The statement, I typically find myself attracted to insert race here, is completely different from, I would never date someone who is insert racial group here. That implies an assumption of dismissal due to race without taking into account a person's physical appearance or their lifestyle or their actual personality, which is more aligned with racist ideologies and is a huge red flag. Preferences don't form in a vacuum, right? They develop through media representation, so limited stereotype portrayals of certain racial groups can affect their perceived attractiveness. If a certain racial group is not presented as the main character in any show or the main romantic interest, you're not going to view them as romantic potential. In Western media, the main character and their romantic interests are predominantly white, right? Which is why it makes sense why so many people are okay with dating white people. They're very familiar. Another reason would be proximity and exposure. People tend to find familiar features attractive, right? That's how I know the dislike people have of Black women can't be because Black women aren't beautiful, because, bitch, Black women are beautiful. But if you're not used to Black features, then, you might not find that race attractive. I have a friend who exclusively is interested in Black men, and everybody knows it. She's white, and it's because she went to a predominantly Black school. She said her school was like 60% Black. And I'm like, oh, that would explain that. So she's used to Black features. She's used to seeing Black people in the context of a romantic interest. Also, family and social influences. So cultural values and family expectations might also shape your preferences. Your family saying, oh, this person is attractive or blah, blah, blah. That's a part of it too. Telling you who you should find attractive or pushing you onto someone. And also personal experience, right? Past relationships and interactions can inform future choices. Who were you friends with? I tend to notice that the white guys who show interest in me come from areas that were very diverse. Like that guy who ended up dating a different Black girl. We were actually from the same county of Gwinnett in Georgia, which I mentioned in another video is one of the most diverse counties in the country. So knowing that he is interested in Black women is not very surprising if he's coming from a county that's very diverse. And he doesn't know this, but hopefully, I don't know if he watches my videos or not. If he does, hi. That's not the first time I've said hey to him in one of my videos. My homie told me that he reached out to one of her friends and tried to hook up with her. And her friend was Asian, so I guess this guy's just traveling around the world, which I like. I would prefer to know that if a white guy is interested in me, that it's not because he has a Black girl fetish. If he's interested in women of other nationalities or ethnicities, I'm like, yay, great. He doesn't have a Black girl fetish, and I might be special after all. So if you're wondering if your dating preferences are racist, it might be helpful to do a little self-reflection test, right? Which I'll include in the description below. Please definitely feel free to respond to it in the comments. I would love to see what you say about this. Question 1, if you met someone who defied your expectations about their race, would you be open to changing your dating preferences? So like that example that I gave before, if you met someone who, you really clicked with and you really liked them and you found them to be attractive, what would you do? Question 2, do your dating preferences rely on assumptions about someone's personality, behavior, or values based on how you've experienced their racial group? So if that Asian girl from the example I gave before who accidentally sat at the Black kids table, if she grew up to not not like any black men or to have assumptions about black men that was purely based off of that experience that she had, is that racist of her? Number 3, when considering potential partners, do you see them primarily as individuals or as members of their racial group? So if you were to describe a potential partner who is outside of your race, would you say, oh, I'm dating a white guy. Oh, I'm dating a black girl. I'm dating so-and-so, she's Asian. Like, how are you describing this person to people? Are you bringing up their race? Is it relevant? And lastly, number 4, would you feel comfortable explaining your dating preferences to someone from a race you wouldn't typically date? I had a guy that I had a gigantic crush on for a whole year who was Asian tell me to my face, I'm not into black girls. Talk about a girl was heartbroken. When you like somebody so much and you hear something and you just it just doesn't sink in like it should. Like, I should have stopped liking him right then. I liked him so much. I was like, well, maybe he'll change his mind. Anyway, but yeah, he definitely felt comfortable, and he's definitely the guy that I was quoting in the very beginning. It's just a preference. He used to say that all the time. And I'm like, that's weird. I asked him what other girls he dated, and he says he's dated all of them. He's dated white girls, Asian girls, Latina girls, but he's just not interested in black girls because it's just a preference. So, I don't know. What do you think? I was like, so if A-Marie was here right now, you don't like A-Marie? You don't think A-Marie's pretty? You wouldn't date her? She's half Asian. I think that racial preferences would be fine if not for the fact that they don't exist in isolation, right? They connect to larger patterns of racial hierarchy in society, considering how conventional beauty standards have historically privileged Eurocentric features. We have Asian people going and getting eyelid surgery. We have people from all different types of races going in, especially black women. Black women have the highest rates of rhinoplasty of any race. Black women are getting them shaved down to a fine tip like Michael Jackson because it's more Eurocentric to look that way. Developing a greater consciousness about racial preferences involves acknowledging socialization, recognizing how media, family, and society have shaped our perceptions of attractiveness, questioning assumptions and examining stereotypes that might underline those preferences, expanding our exposure, actively engaging with diverse communities and media, and getting out of our social bubbles, and prioritizing individuality, focusing on personal qualities rather than just blanketing somebody and viewing them as a race. That doesn't mean that you have to date across all racial lines just to prove that you're not racist, but it does mean approaching dating with awareness of how social conditioning affects attraction and being willing to question patterns that might reflect or reinforce harmful biases. Now, lastly, we're at the end of the show. I don't know if you care or not, but I did want to address the question of, do I have preferences, particularly racial preferences? I'll say this up front. I have 2 preferences. Number 1, my first preference is financial. That's, you got to be financially stable. I can't date a bum. I can't date somebody who is figuring themselves out in a way that they don't have a 401k, anybody who is an entrepreneur and is trying to start a business, or worse, has an idea for a business that they're not currently making money off of and paying taxes on. I can't do it. I've done that before. I won't do it again. Secondly, attraction. What I consider to be attractive is subjective. Will I definitely like a conventionally attractive person? Most likely, but I also have some preferences in terms of attraction that fall outside of that. I don't mind a short king. I'm 5'2", bitch. I don't care if he's short. He could be 5'8". He's taller than me. That's all that matters to me. And with the guys that I liked that were not so attractive, it's typically because I got to know them in an environment where I got to see their personality over time, and I felt very drawn to their personalities. Compatibility is incredibly important, and that's ultimately what wins it for me. As for racial preferences, I grew up in a very diverse area, as I mentioned before, so I never really had any racial preferences when I was growing up. So my final thoughts on preferences are that dating involves cultural preferences, not just physical attraction. People date not just the person, but the idea of what life with them might be like. And I think that plays a gigantic role in choosing romantic partners. I don't really want to center my life around a specific cultural identity. whoever I end up with, currently I'm single, but whoever I end up with, I just really hope that they compliment me, they respect me, I respect them. That's also very important as well. And that they recognize me for the fucking bombshell that I am, okay? That's incredibly important. I also feel like it's everyone's personal responsibility to help break down stereotypes. I think you should give people a chance. Especially if it's a situation where you're attracted to that person anyway. I think it's ridiculous that you wouldn't at least talk to them. You don't know how close to their culture they are. You got to see people as individuals. Honestly, I'm at a point where I'm starting to question my entire life. I recently found out that I give hippie vibes. Does this give hippie vibes, guys? And it makes a certain type of man attracted to me, and it's not the type of man that I'm attracted to, and it's making me question my whole life. And I'm like, is this the problem? Is this what I've been doing wrong this whole time? So I don't know. I'm starting to just question my entire life now. I did want to touch on one more thing before I conclude the video. I watched a lot of videos in regards to people talking about their racial preferences. And in particular, I watched a video, I don't think I'm gonna link it or show it, but basically in the video, it's a white woman and she's saying, this black woman got very offended when this white man said that he wasn't interested in black women. And she's like, it's just a preference, guys. People are allowed to have preferences. And to that, I would say she sounded really ignorant. Whenever anybody says that, especially about black people, I just showed you the statistics, okay? They're not good. You're not special for not being attracted to black people. The people who are saying things like that, like, they don't know what it's like to have a history where people with your features were called monkeys and dehumanized. And then you're wondering, if somebody says, oh, I'm not attracted to black people, or I don't like black people, then you're wondering things that you might already have sensitivities about. You're probably thinking like, do they think I'm too dark? Do they think my features look too black? Are my lips too big? Do they think my hair is nappy and gross? Do they think I smell bad? Do they think I'm dirty? Because these are things that historically black people have been told by other races. These are the stereotypes that have been placed on black people historically, right? This video is about racial preferences in general, but I'm a black woman, so I'm trying to insert my own black opinion. But black people aren't blind. When I did my video about, I can't remember which one, if it was about the ick or about being a femcel, I can't remember which one. I think it was the femcel video, I don't know. One of the guys from Reddit who was an incel said that incels were so desperate that they would even take a fat black girl with acne. And this stuff isn't said in a vacuum, right? Black people see things like this. We know how we're perceived by the world. So when somebody says, why can't black people just get over the fact that people aren't attracted to them and they have their preferences? I just think that that person is not seeing it from our perspective, especially when comments like that are coming from the culture that has set the standard of beauty for the rest of us. Anyway, that's just how I feel about that. Definitely, you guys, take that little, is it a quiz? Is it a questionnaire? Take that little test that I have. I'm going to put it in the description. You'll figure it out because you are super smart. I know you are. But what else do you think about racial preferences? Do you have? I'm really afraid to ask if you have racial preferences. I'm afraid that the comments are going to be a blistery mess. Also, that's new. Can we coin that term? A blistery mess. Anyway, but that's how I feel about that topic. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think having racial preferences is racist, or do you think it's fine? People can have a preferences if they want. And if those preferences exclude whole races, then that's their prerogative. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please remember to like if you like this video, dislike if you dislike this video, subscribe if you are so inclined, ring the bell if you are also so inclined, and have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. And I will see you next time.